Alright students, today in this video, I want to talk to you about quadratic formula. Alright, let's just go right into it. Quadratic formula is used to solve an expression like this. As you can see, is quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Okay, and so the criteria solving this equation is that on one side this has to be a quadratic expression. Right, quadratic expression, and on the other side it has to be 0. Right, that's how you can. That's the criteria for you to solve the problem. All right. Now, I just want to start out by saying that the quadratic formula, the solution for this is that the formula tells you that the final answer x is equal to negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now that's the formula, right? This is what we typically call the quadratic formula. And the teacher will tell you that you just memorize this, and which you still do have to do that. You have to memorize. There's no really other way around it. Even the fact that if you say you're not good at memorizing things is not going to be an excuse. I'm not very good at memorizing things, but I still need to memorize this. Okay? But today, what I want to do is just simply show you a brief discussion and show you how mathematicians come up with this. Okay? So we start out with ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. And we're just going to keep a, b, and c there, and we're going to solve for x. And one way to do that is, in many ways, like what we did before. Remember, there was a concept of a topic that we discussed on completing square. So we will do the same thing. So the first step we do is by moving the c to the other side. So I move c to the other side, it becomes negative c. Now, it's really hard to complete squares when you have a coefficient in front of x squared term. Right? So there's an a right there, so I need to get rid of a. In order to get rid of a, I need to divide the a out. Right? But if I divide the a out on the x squared term, I need to divide by a on every single term. So I will do this, I will do this, I will do this. And as a consequence, you end up with x squared plus b over ax equal to negative c over a. Alright? Now, I'm ready to complete square on this term. Remember, the complete square is you take the middle term, right? And you divide by 2. And then you square it. Then you can basically add to here and add to there. Right? This term has to be the middle one with the x term, this coefficient right there, b over a. You divide by 2 and square that. Now, if you don't remember completing square methodology, check out my previous video. You should have it. Okay. So if you do that, you take the b over a and then you divide by 2. That just becomes b over 2a, and then you square it, so you got b over 2a, and then you put a square over there, and you do exactly the same thing, and you have to add it to the other side because you're dealing with an equation. Now, so what does that mean? That means now you have a complete square that becomes x plus b over 2a. It's the non-square term over there, and then which is equal to that whole thing. So I'll write it out. Right? I'll write it out. That this is negative c over a plus what I will do is I will simply just square that out, b squared over 4a squared. Easy enough? Now, if I look at the left side of the equation, I have parentheses squared. If I want to get rid of the square term, then I'll square root on both sides. Right? So I square root on both sides. I end up with x plus b over 2a, and I'll square root on this side, make it c over a plus b squared over 4a squared, because I square root on both sides, right? But when we square root on both sides, on both sides of the equation, you remember we had this discussion before. You had to have a plus and minus, because you end up with two different answers, a plus answer and a minus answer. Again, if you don't remember that, check out my previous video. Alright, so now I will simply subtract b over 2a on both sides. Then I end up with negative b over 2a, right? Because positive b over 2a, bringing to the other side becomes negative b over 2a, keeping the plus minus, square root of negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Now, essentially, I already found my answer for x. My x is just this. Now, quadratic formula looks a little bit, right? Looks a little bit different, right? It looks like this. So this essentially is just the simplified version of this more complex expression. Take a look at how we do it. Okay, move this up a little bit. X is equal to negative b over 2a. Okay, plus minus. Now, what I would do is I will make sure I have a common denominator because there are two different fractions. So I have 4a squared as a common denominator. But the first term, in order to get to 4a squared, that means I need to multiply by 4 and an a, right? So I need to multiply by a 4 and an a up there. So it's minus 4ac. And then plus b squared. So let's keep going. Negative b, 2a, plus minus. Now notice, this is just square root of 4a squared. And over here, this is just minus 4ac plus b squared. Let's keep going. Negative b over 2a plus minus. Wait a minute. On the bottom, if it's a square root of 4a squared, right? Square root of 4 is 2. Bring that out of the radical. Square root of a squared is a. Whoa, look at this. They end up with a common denominator for 2a. The top, I just rearrange this. Instead of minus 4ac plus b squared, I just write this as b squared minus 4ac. Alright, just write that into a single term. 2a, negative b, plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. Look at this. Isn't this what we call the quadratic formula? Here you go. We have successfully derived the quadratic formula. That's where it comes from. So, let's keep going. The application of this, right, is just applying to a normal equation. So if you have equation says solve, right, solve 3x squared minus 4x minus 9 is equal to 0. You look at this and say, okay, there's not a simple way to factor this out. You can really do complete square on this one. It's probably pretty complicated. Then I'm just going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula. If it's a quadratic formula, I need to identify the a, b, and c so that I can just simply apply to the formula. A is always a value in front of the x squared term, so that's 3. B is the value in front of the x term, so it's negative 4. C is just a combine of the constant terms. In this case, it's negative 9. So, fine. So, using the application of formula, then I have negative b, so negative of negative 4. Negative b plus minus square root b squared. So it's negative 4 squared minus 4ac over 2a. See, my first line, right after I apply the quadratic formula, I write out every single one without simplification because I don't want to mess it up. I want to make sure that I have all the right components before I begin to, calculate and simplify. So x is equal to, in this case, is positive 4 plus minus square root of, right? So this is 16. And negative and negative makes it positive, right? And then 4 times 3, and then times 9. Let me just quickly calculate that value. So we got 4 times 3 times 9, you get 108 divided by 6. Bring over here, x is equal to, notice I'm still very neat in the way I write my problem. Even if I switch to a different section of the paper, I still make sure that I carry the x, I carry the equal sign, so I don't mess up on anything, right? So now we have 4 plus minus square root of 124 over 6. Now, typically that's fine. Mathematically, that is a perfectly valid answer. Oftentimes, the test will ask you to simplify. You may simplify them, right? So we can go ahead and simplify a little bit more. We can make that into 4 plus minus 2 square root of 31. Now, you should be able to do that. You should be able to turn square root of 124 to 2 times square root of 31. And then divide by 6. Now you can, right, factor, you have a 4 here, you have a 2 here, you have a 3 here. So and because the numerator has 2 terms, you have to make sure that if you simplify with one particular side, you have to do the same thing over here. So this turns out to be 2 plus minus square root of 31 over 3. So that becomes your final solution. Okay? So here ends this particular short lesson on quadratic formula. I just want to use this short video to get you a quick view on how the origin, right? The way we come up with this quadratic formula. It's not just some random thing that we just ask students to memorize, but it came out of the process of using a variety of techniques that we explored earlier on solving a quadratic equation. And apply the same techniques on more generalized form of the quadratic equation, and then we come up with the quadratic formula. And as you can see, this quadratic formula is useful in providing shortcuts on solving some practical problems. All right, here ends the video on this one. The next video, what I'm going to show you is just kind of pull everything together on thinking about equations, functions, and how quadratic formula at the end help us to solve that problem. All right, see you next time.